Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm Sneha Koshy and you're watching Beyond the Headline. Well, nicotine addiction is a huge challenge. And for even celebrities like Ben Affleck, it's just not been easy to kick the butt, quote unquote. And when we say that, what does it mean? It was almost in 2005, he said he had quit smoking. Almost a decade later, he's back to it again. The first time around, he sought help from a hypnotherapist. Now, there are sources, there are reports that are emerging that he sought the help of a hypnotherapist again. This isn't about voyeurism. This isn't about Ben Affleck's life. But today's show is a focus on how challenging the road to kicking the butt can be, but how important it is and what's the best ways that one can resort to. We have a panel of experts and we have some celebrities who have done it all. Allow me to take you to the headlines first. Fresh violence erupts in Manipur. Deputy Commissioner's office attacked in Kankopi. Several cops, including SP, injured. Protesters demand BSF's removal. Battle lines have been drawn in Delhi with just weeks to go for elections. Prime Minister Modi rakes up Sheesh Mahal controversy, says Arvind Kejriwal is Kattar Beiman. Aam Aadmi Party hits back and reminds Prime Minister of his 10 lakh rupees suit. Relief for Allu Arjun in Sandhya Theatre stampede case. A Telangana court has granted the actor regular bail despite cops naming him as the main accused. Allu Arjun was already out on interim bail. The Indian government is on alert amid a new virus outbreak in China. The health ministry is closely monitoring seasonal influenza cases in the country. The virus in China has led to overcrowding in hospitals and fears of another health crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, Hollywood star and heartthrob Ben Affleck is struggling with nicotine. According to reports, Affleck is back to chain smoking and has reportedly sought help of a hypnotherapist. That's right. Not the first time. He quit smoking, according to reports, in 2005 after a session with, or after a series of sessions with hypnotherapist on the advice of his friend Matt Damon. But Ben Affleck relapsed to nicotine addiction almost a decade later, more than a decade later, and has worsened since then. According to a source quoted by Radar Online, Ben was so happy when he quit, he swore he'd never go back. But here he is, just as addicted as ever and desperate to stop. He hates the way it smells and knows it's terrible for its health, not to mention a terrible example for his kids. Reports say it has gotten worse, allegedly due to his short-lived marriage to J-Lo, or Jennifer Lopez. He was even photographed chain smoking in his car the day after J-Lo filed for divorce in August last year. Well, don't get me wrong. It's very important to mention this. This show isn't about invading a celebrity's private space for voyeurism, but this is a reflection of how difficult and challenging quitting nicotine is, and often how the circumstances and blames can be very easily put on the situation or the challenge someone is going through, but that really is not how it's supposed to be seen. In fact, how stress, unsettling or fearful challenges almost always pose a connect to relapse. The need for a falsely perceived, fuzzy, happy emotion, which in reality is dopamine pumped by nicotine and self-destructive. New research and cessation techniques, as well as committed cessation cadre, promise to help wean smokers off the habit more permanently and in the bargain reduce the burden of tobacco-related diseases in the country. But it just isn't easy. Shah Rukh Khan, who once admitted to smoking 100 cigarettes a day, surprised fans on his 59th birthday last year by revealing that he has finally quit smoking after struggling with it for over 30 years, and admitted that he had hoped to feel less out of breath. Withdrawal symptoms. On your screens, you have celebrities who have struggled but managed to quit their nicotine addiction. If you could just play out those visuals as well. On our panel tonight, though, are experts who will take us through the process, the challenges and possible solutions, even the new age solutions, and how much of that is real. Before that, look at these two important aspects. Researchers from University College London, UCL, reveal that men lose an average of 17 minutes of their life with each cigarette smoked. While for women, the figure is an even more alarming 22 minutes. 17 minutes per cigarette is alarming. 22 minutes per cigarette is alarming. That's the cost you bear for every cigarette you smoke. These new findings surpass previous estimates, which suggested an 11-minute reduction from your life cycle per cigarette. Now, though our show largely tonight is focused on getting off nicotine, I do want to draw your attention to a very important study, because many people don't seem to know this. Remember, people often in the past have quoted studies about 2 pegs a week or 1 peg a day as reference points for safe limits of alcohol consumption. Read up, because the latest study from last year and scientifically accepted by doctors suggests not even 1 sip of alcohol is safe. There is no safe level of alcohol consumption. Well, back to our focus of nicotine. Let me just introduce my panelists to you at this point. I'm being joined by Satyajit Chaurasia, who is a celebrity fitness coach, and he's been part of the lives of many celebrities, including Hrithik Roshan as well as Amir Khan. Thank you very much, Satyajit Chaurasia, for joining us. Johnson J. Ederanmulla, who's an executive director for NRC NSD as well as director for ADDIC in India. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for joining us. Dr. Shambhavi Jaiman, who's a consultant psychiatrist with Fortis Healthcare, joins us, as well as Dr. Priya Raghavan, who's a de-addiction expert. Thank you very much, all 4 of you, for joining us. An important discourse, but while many of us, actually everybody knows smoking is harmful, consumption of liquor is harmful, but the way to get out of it, for those who do want to get out of it, has been hugely challenging. Let me just at this point first go to you, Mr. Johnson. Let me just start with you. Mr. Johnson, we just went through the life of Ben Affleck right now, who seems to have returned to his nicotine addiction. Here's what I want to ask you. You know, from the reports that have emerged, he had gotten out of addiction, nicotine addiction. He is back to nicotine addiction. His circumstances, the challenges he is in, is often equated to the divorce that he's going with J-Lo, the very short-lived marriage, and how it seemed to have aggravated. We don't know. These are all reports that are coming in. But what I do want to ask you is, there is a direct correlation of how struggling to get out of nicotine even becomes harder because of often the dopamine connect to a nicotine in an earlier instance or the earlier experience, the fuzzy happy feeling, as many people call it. Mr. Johnson, do you want to take us through this?
Yes, this is a big problem. You know that Mark Twain said it's difficult to quit smoking. I've quit several times. So this is a thing, the fascinating thing about nicotine, because it is one of the strongest non-addictive, looking into any substances more than alcohol or any drugs. So once you are in, it is not easy to quit because the dopamine, the effect of the dopamine, the feeling of the happiness feeling, the well-being feeling is there on one side. But when the addiction goes up, you find it difficult to quit because it's already in your bloodstream and you find it difficult to get out of it. And even if you quit it, again, you have the relapse problem coming up. So it's not that easy quitting, and because of the relapse, it's not that easy. But I think with strong willpower, with strong support, with strong medication, and like yoga, hypnotherapy, all these things will help. to come out of it. But better not to start. That is the best thing which I always say.
Right. Dr. Priya Raghavan, if I can get you in. Dr. Priya, I mean, let's look at it. Shah Rukh Khan just last year said, I have finally quit smoking. It comes after 30 years of him smoking, Dr. Priya. He said that he just hoped that he was less breathless. How severe are withdrawal symptoms? Dr. Johnson spoke about using your willpower, but what can be done to ensure that the willpower is not broken? Because the journey alone is extremely difficult.
Yes. So when we talk about addictions, Neha, be it cigarette or alcohol for that matter, or any other substance, I think it's very important to remember what we call the reward pathway in the brain. All of us have got a reward pathway. It's not just for addicts. Even for normal people, we all function on the basis of the reward pathway. We move forward in life based on this reward pathway in the brain. For example, if you have good food, you go to a hotel, you eat well, you dress up well, you feel nice, and then there's a small rush of dopamine each time. And that's what's called the reward pathway, where there's a massive dopamine release. However, what happens with substances like cigarettes or with alcohol is that there's a much bigger release of dopamine, and that is something that the brain eventually learns to remember, and that's part of the reward pathway, and that's why it becomes entrenched as a habit. How to actually get out of it it has to be in such a way that it's a well thought out process. It's not just about having motivation, because when you look at the underlying reasons for why a person is actually addicted to a substance, as I said, there are multiple factors that come in. What we call the gene and the environment interplay. What kind of environment were they brought up in? What is their personality? Do they have any added mental illness? Do they have high heritability, as in was there anyone in the family that was smoking or drinking, in which case heritability is pretty high. So we need to look at all of these factors in addition to motivation, and then come up with a specific plan for an individual. And part of the plan might include, yes, medications are always there. We've also got therapy, if that makes any sense. But we also need to address the underlying motivation of the individual. Are they really interested? And motivation levels can dip from time to time. Even in you and me, we are not always motivated every single day to show up to work or whatever. So we need to keep the motivation going. So it's a combination of these approaches, I think, that might actually help them come out of it.
Dr. Shambhavi Jayman, now, we just heard the doctor speak about how it's important to keep oneself motivated. Look at Ben Affleck. What does he say? I'm going back to him because it's very relevant to see what he's saying. It's not just that he's a celebrity. What he's speaking is literally echoing with many people, ordinary commoners who are out there like me, and many of them are leading these sentences. What is he saying? There's an insider, there's a source who's gone on to say that he was extremely happy, he was thrilled that he had kicked this. But he's back in it. He knows how bad it is. He hates the smell of it. He hates the taste of it. But he's just back in it, and it seems to have just worsened with the personal situation that he's going in. Dr. Shambhavi Jayman, you may want to quit nicotine addiction. You may want to quit your smoking. There may be a point where you may be highly motivated and you may have a relapse. You may just not be able to quit it despite being very high on motivation. What must someone do? Because in this case, you have Ben Affleck go and reach out to a hypnotherapist. How would you suggest people, what should they be doing?
I mean, when we talk about the treatment or the aspect of addiction in general, like Dr. Priya also spoke, I completely agree that it is something which is not a habit, which is not just about motivation, which is not just about, being in a difficult situation. When we look at any sort of psychiatric illness, and for that matter, addiction in general, there is a biopsychosocial model which we follow, and that basically means that there's a biological component, there's a psychological component, and there's a social component where there's an interplay of all these three, and that's why the addiction happens. Now, yes, there might be this circumstantial aspect to it at this moment, but we cannot forget that it's an illness. It's not a habit, it's not a weakness. Right? Now, for example, when we're talking about addiction, the association which we have with the de-addiction center called as Alpha Healing Center, where Fortis is working at focusing at a holistic treatment, right? Holistic treatment in terms of medication to an extent, identifying if there's an underlying illness, like Dr. Priya Raghavan mentioned, identifying if there are any other associated factors in terms of the psychological aspects, in terms of the social aspects, and holistically addressing all of them together simultaneously and not taking it one after the other. So I would not suggest, or I would not say that, going to one person is not right or right. It's not about that. It's about looking at it as a comprehensive treatment. It's not just one modality of treatment which is going to help.
Dr. Shambhavi, let me get you in once more. You made a statement, and that is, this is not a habit. This is an illness. Would you want to spend a few minutes on that? Because, let's look at it. When you say it's an illness, there are people who say that they are not addicted, in the sense they are not smoking 100 cigarettes a day. They may be smoking their 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever numbers. At what point is it a habit, and at what point is it an illness? How do you differentiate this? How do you communicate this to people?
So when we talk about it in the aspect of it being an illness, right, we look at certain criteria. When we look at illness, we look at tolerance. We start with 1. After a point, 1 is not enough. We go to 3, we go to 5, we go to 7, we go to 10 a day, right? That's how it develops. The second part is the need for it, the craving for it, right? You're sitting, you're working in your office, you're at home, you're relaxed, but still you get that urge to want to smoke. Right? It's not something which is just a thing that, okay, this is my time. So it becomes so much of a problem that it starts to hamper your functioning. It starts to hamper your day-to-day life. It starts to hamper your social life in terms of your family, interpersonal relationships. So when these aspects are met over a prolonged period of time, which under certain criteria which we follow, classification which we follow, for a certain period of time, say a year, right, most of the time during the year, it is considered as an illness. And most of the time, almost every time, once a person gets into a substance, it almost always leads into an illness.
Satyajit Chaurasia, if I can get you in at this point. Now, you are somebody who has trained many celebrities, including Aamir Khan and Hrithik Roshan, and from what we have read, all of them have also at some stage successfully managed to quit nicotine or smoking for that matter. How much of a correlation is there between quitting smoking, quitting addiction, and a healthy lifestyle, particularly a physical, active or a workout lifestyle?
I think that smoking is a kind of illness, what she just said. It's like it's so easily available, and when you are alone and when you are high with your success, you need something to just it's a kind of illness, I would say. And the worst thing is it's easily available, and when you are alone and lonely, you just seek to have something which gives you a little high, a kick. And people think that 1 or 2 cigarettes doesn't cause a lot of damage, but it does really, because you are getting to addiction every day, every smoke, whenever you are smoking. And sorry to say, I've tried in my life, but my thing is that I'm lucky that I didn't got that high, or I was enough sensible to understand that this is not really good for my body. So at that time, I stopped. And whoever smokes in front of me, I feel giddy.
Was it easy for you to stop?
I don't feel good. Of course, I
Was
don't
it
feel
was it easy for you to
comfortable.
stop?
Of course, as I said, I was lucky. I didn't. It didn't took me on that level. And in Bollywood parties, everybody's drinking and smoking. It's a kind of you feel I'm a star, I'm a hero, and people are watching me, and I'm smoking. And when you leave the smoke, you feel little different from the public. And when you are young, that really takes you on a different level of high. And when you're very successful, when you're drinking and when you're enjoying, it's very difficult to not have have a cigarette that time. So it's like illness, and it's a baddest addiction you can ever see in this planet. Like alcohol is fine. Not fine, but you're not drinking every day, but smoking.
It's not fine. It's not fine. But can I
lying
get you, Satyaji
right next to
Chaurasia,
you.
very importantly, can you tell me, is there a correlation? Does physical workout, does an active lifestyle, physically active lifestyle help quit nicotine? Do your stars, is there a correlation that you see in your stars who have trained with you and have successfully managed to quit nicotine? Is there a correlation that you have seen and witnessed?
Of course, see, everybody smoked in their life, but when you have a goal, when you have to shoot, and when you are really working hard on your physique, on your body, and you have to go bare body in front of the camera, so you have to follow certain rules. You can't mess up with those things. And especially when you're on the cardio, on the treadmill, when you run, when you're out of breath, you really feel from inside that this is not me. Like this is taking me behind. And when you're very serious in your transformation or making a body, so when you're into fitness, you realize that this is not good. That's why these people really left cigarette, because I know Amir so well, even Ritik. So one point of a time they were smoking. Everybody has their past. So I remember in Gajini with Amir Khan, he left everything because he knows that I have to look the best. And especially on the cardio, when you're running, when you're out of breath, that really hits you. Like if you're a sensible person, you will instantaneously leave that thing, and it's all mindset. You have to feel from within. That's how it works.
Okay. Let me just get in Mr. Johnson at this point. Mr. Johnson, we just heard Mr. Chaurasia speak about how Amir Khan, while training for Gajni, just left it because he felt out of breath. What happens to your body? I mean, can one smoke, two smokes, 3 fags, 4 fags? Is it that bad?
Oh, it's not, because I would like to see
Dr.
it in a
Johnson?
bigger angle, because we are looking into basically on the curative part and the addictive part. But we have to understand this is a very big public health problem in this country, because if you look into alcohol, because we cannot ignore alcohol, because WHO statement is already there, because there is no safe limit for alcohol. It is one of the biggest burden the country is facing, the world is facing. Of course, tobacco is another big burden. If you look into the cost effect, the cost part of it, the diseases, if you look into most of the diseases, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, respiratory diseases, and all these things. When you look into all these things, it is the biggest public health issue. That's what the World Health Organization is giving much focus on this topic, more than the curative aspects. They look into the prevention aspect because of that. Because if you look into it, the specific date is there, because May 31st is World No Tobacco Day from 1987. And you see how important the WHO is giving for World No Tobacco Day, as well as the tobacco prevention activities. And as well as we know that under the Ministry of Health, how many smoking cessation clinics have been started all over the country, attached to regional cancer centers, hospitals, and all.
But is it practical? These smoking cessation clinics that have been started, I mean, for an educated Indian who's working, say, at an X profile, who earns pretty decently or is quite high flying, it depends upon whichever prism one is working in. And I mean, it's just the prism that one has. An affluent Indian, an affluent middle class, all a celebrity, how practical are these cessation clinics?
No, not only the private, this session clinics, we have a lot of private clinics and private hospitals and a lot of things like that. Because if you know that this is a problem, because you are getting cancer out of it, you are getting heart disease out of it, because it is your health that matters. If your health is not there, then what is your life? Because the health is the most prime thing, and everybody knows that how alcohol is affecting the body, how nicotine is affecting the body. So for healthy lifestyle, that's what the WHO has come out, the United Nations has come out with the NCD, Sustainable Development Goals, especially the what you call the NCDs, non-communicable diseases, have come into the prime aspect with the World Action Plan, with Global Action Plan for 2030 is already there to bring down the smoking by 30%, because it's a policy which they want to do it. And not only on curative aspect, they look into the supply reduction part, they look into the demand reduction part, then they look into the harm reduction part, plus the research all together, combined together, because we cannot deal with it in isolation. Because we need policies, we need strong legislation.
Right, Dr. Priya, if I can get you in to respond to Mr. Johnson, what Mr. Johnson is saying. So Mr. Johnson is saying policy, there is a focus. There is an aim, there's a plan which is charted out policy-wise. But just look at what it is in reality when you look at how it's unfolding on the ground. Priya Raghavan, we were looking at some of these new age methods that seem to be getting a lot of, eyeballs for that matter. We obviously have Ben Affleck, who's gone and spoken about, who's reached out to a hypnotherapist. You have acupuncture, different forms of acupuncture and acupressure, including laser for that matter, herbal treatments, brain stimulation, hypnosis, cold laser therapy. For an ordinary person, for a lay person, what should must do? How should this be worked out? If tomorrow somebody is saying that, maybe I need to go beyond myself and look for some support to be able to kick the butt, what should that person do?
So that's a fantastic start. If somebody is considering quitting smoking or quitting any of the habits that they have, addictive habits that they feel they've developed, I think the first thing that would make sense would be to perhaps reach out to your closest psychiatrist, because the psychiatrist will be in a good position to actually make an overall assessment of things like, has it affected their physical health? How much has this affected their mental health? What are the stumbling blocks in their road to recovery? And how are we going to be able to tackle that? What kind of support does this person have? Family support, societal support is also very important. And what's the sort of environment that they are living in? Is it kind of ridden with other people who are also taking drugs, alcohol? Or is it, is this person surrounded by a group of people who are much more motivated to quit? And finally, what is their accessibility to treatment? That's pretty important as well. Is this person able to, motivated enough to actually be treated from home? Can they just come into the clinic? Or are they unwell enough that they actually need to be admitted? And if so, are they able to do it? So all of these kind of things will be looked at, and an overall treatment plan for that particular individual can be formed when they see the psychiatrist. And that will obviously include some of the things that you've already mentioned. Remember, you said about brain stimulation treatments. These are all kind of newer treatments, and we can always see if this person will benefit from such and such a treatment. Acupuncture again.
So these are legit treatments, isn't it? Just wanted to get this question because we have it up on our screen. We hear celebrities talk about these keep coming up in reports. So whatever these things that we have referred to, acupuncture, acupressure, brain stimulation, hypnosis, cold laser therapy, these are legitimate treatments or support systems that are scientifically accepted. Is that correct to say?
So if you look at the evidence, there is some evidence for some of these treatments. There will always, there are other treatments when it comes to nicotine addiction that have far more evidence than some of the ones that you have mentioned. For example, we've got nicotine replacement therapy, be it lozenges, be it the patches, be it the chewing gums for nicotine. They have much more evidence than some of the other treatments that you've mentioned, but they are much more traditional, but still accepted, and they work reasonably well. We've also got other medication like, there's a tablet called varenicline that also helps reduce craving. We've got other treatments like bupropion, which is a good antidepressant, but it also helps in kicking the habit of smoking. So having said that, these may not be enough for some people, and they may need a little bit of these brain stimulation, the newer treatments, what we call RTMS. Evidence is emerging as yet for RTMS. It's not fully there, but it's definitely there. The thing about RTMS is it causes less harm. So no harm in actually trying out. Although you don't have massive evidence, evidence is mounting, and I think it's reasonable to use that. So it depends on what treatments that's being offered. Then we can look at the individual evidence for it, if that makes sense.
Right. Let me just go, Dr. Shambhavi, at this point. My last question to you, from where Dr. Priya left it, 17 minutes of your life being cut short with each cigarette. I mean, that is staggering. That is staggering. Imagine just how much of your life is being cut short by that cigarette that you are consuming. Your loved ones are getting affected with all of this. Here's a question to anybody who's watching us, who wants to or doesn't want to. I know the two are very different boats. But to anybody who's watching and saying, yes, I smoke, what should I do next? We just heard Dr. Priya say, reach out to your psychiatrist, the closest, nearest psychiatrist. What would you say? Where should the starting point be?
I mean, it can be, I would not say that it has to be a psychiatrist. It can be somebody who's a loved one who can get you that help, right? You might not have access to a psychiatrist. You might not have the awareness that, okay, nicotine addiction is a thing. So the first and the most important is to get important information around it and get it from a resource which is credible. Reach out to a person whom you feel comfortable with and probably figure out with them. It can be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It can be a family member. It can be a colleague whom you can discuss it with, and then reach out for the next step, which would be getting mental health care professional help. Like you said, that there are two things which we need to look at.
Dr. Shambhavi, I also want to ask, before we just part, there's another question I want to ask since what you're talking about. It's possibly important to break that association. Association, which I mean is that mental association that comes from that fag. That mental association of a relief, of a de-stress. How does one do that?
I mean, it depends. So the association might not just be to that, relief which you feel. It can also be to the people whom you smoke with or drink with. It can be the place where you smoke or drink. You're crossing that shop, you're crossing that restaurant, you're listening to that music which you usually listen to. So the cues, what we call it, can be multiple. And breaking that is something which we require intensive therapeutic intervention in terms of therapy, in terms of psychotherapy. Understanding the cues is the first thing which you would do, right? It's not just going to be that you go replace something else. You understand that there are other ways in which you can relieve that stress. It's not just smoking. Understanding the cues, addressing the cues. These are the two things which are important when we're talking about, for breaking that association between smoking.
Right. Right. Thank you very much to all four of you for your time. Satyajit, Chaurasia, Johnson, Mr. Johnson, Dr. Shambhavi Jaiman, as well as Dr. Priya Raghavan. Thank you very much for your time. I wish we had an easier way to deal with this, but as Ben Affleck's life and as the life of several celebrities, the images that you have been seeing on the screen is, it's never going to be an easy path ahead. But what can be done is, it can be overcome. This is one point where the commoners and the celebrities meet. It's the struggle, the battle, and the victory that also lies ahead. Thank you very much to our panelists for joining us, and thank you very much to our viewers for joining us. Time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.